Hello, welcome to the Maya Toolbelt. This is Michael. Thought I would try something new with having my little picture-in-picture here. Hope you guys enjoy that. In this video, I just wanted to show exactly how you would import a model from Maya and using Substance Painter for textures and bring those assets into Unreal and how to implement them together to create an asset in a game. This is something I've been asked to demonstrate many times for my students. So I thought I might do a video like this to help anybody who has the same question to kind of run through those steps. And also for my students, I could link them to this video in the future. So here you can see I have a completed model of this piano. The model has been completed with UVs as well. If we go to Panels, Saved Layouts, Perspective/UV Editor, and there we go. So I have a UV layout here. It's not the best UV layout. Probably could improve this, but it is UV though. So it has UVs. There's only one UV set, and there's one material applied. So that means I don't have a like Lambert's applied to certain faces and other materials applied to other faces, that kind of thing. So this model should be ready to go. You can see here I have the pivot point placed at the bottom of the model, kind of in the middle. And the idea here is that whenever you bring this model into Unreal or any application, that pivot point, where that is, that's going to be kind of where it contacts the environment, and where if you are working with like a team with like a environment artist other than you, or with like a level designer, they can take your asset, place it, and it would be, on the ground like this. They can move it. Whenever they rotate it, it makes sense. It rotates from the center, that sort of thing. There is also the idea of, okay, well, you can have your pivot point kind of at a corner like this, for example, and you could rotate it around that point. That's also another option. If you were to do that, you would press the D key, D as in dog, to move that pivot around. And when you export it, though, you want to make sure that you grid snap it to the origin of the scene here. And one way to do that is up here in the top right. See these three boxes here? I can just type in 0, 0, 0, hit enter. It'll move. Let me move it over here. So let me do it again. 0, 0, 0, hit enter. It'll move it to the origin. And you'll also notice that because I moved the pivot and moved the piano, I have these numbers here for translate X and Z. If I had any kind of rotation values or anything like that, I'd want to freeze those. Go into modify, freeze transformations. There's also this little snowflake button here that you can use for that same function. So wherever you want your pivot to be, wherever it makes sense, that's where you'd place it. Just make sure that your prop is at the origin of the scene here, and it's properly named, and it's all frozen like this. And then we're ready to export. So I'll go to File, Export Selection. You can also go Game Exporter. That's another option. So I'll make sure I'm exporting this file type as a FBX export. And then I'm going to name it. I've already had one in here. I'll just write over it, just overwrite it. So now that we have the FBX exported, we can bring it into Substance Painter. So here's Substance Painter, and you see this is my cooking show. It's already a completed model. So once you bring your FBX into Substance Painter, you would then texture it. And here it is all textured. So let's say I'm done with this. I'm gonna go to File, Export Textures. I'm just gonna export the piano, not the strings for now. So first, the output directory, you can change your folder to be where you want these textures to go. Let's say I'm going to go to my same folder I was using before, my school example folder here. The output template, this is a settings for what kind of textures you want to export. And you'll see there's lots of presets here for different sorts of applications. Like we have, for example, here we have some PBR metallic roughness, kind of generalized things. We have things for Redshift, which is a rendering platform. RenderMan, a program that you can see Disney uses. Roblox even. You can have all these different presets. Now I'm using Unreal for this example, but if you were to be using Unity, another game engine, you have some Unity options here as well. So I'm going to use Unreal Engine 4 Packed. You'll notice for Unreal, there is another one called Unreal Engine 4 SSS Packed. The 3 S's stands for like subsurface scattering. like you would usually use for skin shaders or things like that, which I'm not doing for a piano, so I'll keep it here. Even though right now they have Unreal Engine 5 out, the 4 preset here still works the same way in both. So that works fine. You don't have to make like a special Unreal Engine 5 version or anything like that. Your file type you can choose from. We have Targas set here. We also can use PNGs, all kinds of different file types you can choose from. I probably would stay away from JPEGs. They usually aren't the best quality as far as 3D art goes. So Targa is a good one, TIFF, PNG, that sort of thing. The size usually is based on the document resolution, but you can change this. You can override this to be a different resolution if you'd like to. I'll just keep it based on what I have. And yeah, I think we're good there. So click on the piano checkbox material here. We can see the 4 textures that it's going to attempt to export. And it uses this kind of code phrase, which we can get into later. But essentially, we have a color, a normal map right here, an emissive map. And then the second one, it's kind of hard to tell. But if I go to my list of exports, you can see it better here. Base color, emissive, normal. And then we have the packed texture, which includes the ambient occlusion, roughness, and metallic, all packed into one texture. Now you can see also the name of it here is kind of this long name. I can always rename this. I can go into my template and change how it names things. I'm not going to worry about it right now, but essentially it's based on the FBX name, which was piano low actually. And then piano was the material name. If I go to my texture set list, you'll see I have a piano material name. So that's where these names are coming from. And of course, I didn't save my settings. I forgot to do that. So I need to make sure I reset these things here. Change this back to Unreal Engine 4 packed Targa. There we go. I'll hit export. So it's going to go through the process of exporting. You'll notice instead of exporting all 4 textures, we only got 3. That's because it attempted to export the emissive texture, but I don't have any emissive information in these textures, so it skipped it. So now we have a base color, occlusion, roughness, and metallic packed texture, and a normal map texture. And it all saved to that folder. So I can go into Unreal now. So here you can see I've already done it once, just kind of as an example here of what we're going to end up with. But I'm going to just make a new folder here. I'm going to add new folder here at Unreal. I'll call this Piano 2. Open up that folder here, and I'll add, and now we'll choose import. So there's my piano.fbx. I'll import that. Now it's going to have some import settings here. So one thing I want to make sure I don't do, if I scroll down, materials, the materials section, I'm going to not import any materials because I'm going to make my material here in Unreal and assign all the textures myself. So I'm not going to do any kind of automatic import of materials. I'm also not going to import any textures because I'm going to do that myself. So I just tend to turn off that kind of automation. So I'll hit import. So mainly it's going to import the model and double click it to open up the model viewer. I'll just dock it here. So here's the model itself. There's no materials or textures applied. It's just using a default world grid material, and that's perfectly fine. So here in this piano folder I have, I'm going to go to add, and I'll import those textures I have. So I have my base color, Targa, normal, and occlusion, roughness, metallic. Hit open on those. So see, it imports all 3 of those here. So I'm going to open up each of these textures one by one just to kind of show you a little bit of information about those. Okay, so this is the color texture. It's fairly straightforward. Don't really have to do much with this. I'll hit save. I'm going to save it. This is the normal map. Usually Unreal will automatically detect that this is a normal map. You'll see here under compression settings, it says this is a normal map. And I'll say, yes, you're right, save. Now this one looks like a clown threw up. And essentially what it is, if you can look through the RGB channels here, I can turn off the green and blue and just look at red. The red channel here, this is the ambient occlusion texture. So that texture, the red channel by itself would be that texture. Turn off red and turn on green. This is the roughness map. Turn off green and turn on blue. This is the metallic map. So there's 3 different textures all kind of packed into here using the red, green, and blue channels. So when you look at it as a color image, it looks very odd because you have these 3 red, green, and blue channels being used for very different things, all kind of combined together in the color view, the combined red, green, and blue channel. Now, because it is a color image, Unreal will typically automatically decide to color correct that image using this sRGB color correction algorithm. And I don't want that to happen, because if it color corrects it based on this combined image, it's going to modify the values of our individual textures that we have packed inside here. So I'm going to uncheck sRGB. You'll notice the color has changed. It's no longer being color corrected, and I'll hit save. Now, the big reason to do that is because we don't want this color correction to happen, and we'll make sure we make that change before we try to apply it to anything, and then hit save like that. So I can close this and go back to the folder. So here I have all 3 of my textures ready to go. Now this little asterisk you'll notice in the bottom left of the thumbnail for the piano, that's just an indication that this has not been saved yet. You'll notice I saved the other 3 texture files, so they do not have that little asterisk in the corner. That's important to understand. Then I'll click add, and I'll add a material. So this is going to be my piano material, so I'll use type M underscore piano material. Do that. Hit enter. You notice again, the little asterisk there. That means it has to be saved before it really takes effect. I'll double click the material to bring up the material viewer here, or material editor. I'm just going to undock it like this, because I feel like it's easiest just to grab these 3 textures and just drag and drop it right there into that window. It just makes it really easy to place those like that. And now I can move these textures around individually. There we go. So this works a lot like Maya's Hypershade or any other kind of node-based editor, but this over here is the material, and these are the 3 textures. I'm going to attach those textures to their individual slots or channels on the material. So the color map here, this top one, I can tell by the thumbnail. It's going to drag and drop the combined RGB channel onto base color. The normal map looks this blue and purpley blue one, combined RGB channel onto the normal channel of the material. But then this one, you'll remember we said the individual red, green, and blue channels do different things. So instead of dragging off of the combined red, green, and blue channel, I'm actually going to drag off the red channel and green channel and blue channel specifically. So the really easy way to remember where the red, green, and blue channels should be plugged into on the material is the acronym ARM, A-R-M. Zoom in here a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. So the red channel, go to ambient occlusion. So ARM, A, red to A. In the ARM acronym, R means roughness up here. So the green channel, I'll drag up here to roughness. And then M in the ARM acronym is metallic. I'll drag the blue channel up here to metallic. So just doing that, you can see there the material in our little material preview sphere. I'll hit save to apply that change. So now we can see here our sphere on right there has all our textures applied. Now back to the model of the piano. I'll close that. I'm going to apply that material here into the model. So over here I have the material slot with the default world grid. If I click on this little drop-down menu, I can try to go find my piano, but I named it thankfully, so I can do a search for underscore piano, and I named it material here. And I can apply that material here in the object viewer. Might take it a minute to process. There we go. Had to process the shader a little bit, but now we have the texture all applied to the model. I'll hit save. Lots of saving involved, you notice. I'm going to make sure you save everything. Like for example, I'm seeing this little asterisk on the material. That means I feel like it hasn't been saved yet. So I'm going to right click on it and just make sure I hit save. There we go. So I'm going to drag and drop this piano now into the scene. And you'll notice the pivot point is right there at the leg, like I had it in Maya. So that, oops, make sure I choose the right axis to move this on. So that whenever the level designer or whoever is manipulating this object, they'll know, okay, I can rotate the piano around this leg like this. This older version of the model I have here has the pivot point you'll see at the center. So whenever they rotate it, it rotates around that pivot point like so. So that pivot point can change based on how you export it from Maya and from where. But in general, though, this map now has both these pianos applied. And so I took that model from Maya, I took the textures from Substance Painter, brought them all here into Unreal. I made a couple of adjustments, mainly the arm texture, we'll call it, needed to have its color correction taken off and the applied to a new material, and then that material applied to the piano. And then we all save, make sure everything's saved, no asterisks in the corners. You notice my level has an asterisk. That means the level has not been saved. So if I want this change with the piano to be saved, I'll make sure I need to go to File and say Save Current Level. So now that little asterisk is gone. And if you were to want to say zip up this project to send to someone, make sure everything's saved first, which it all is now. I can go to File and say Zip Project. It'll create a zip file that you can then send to your instructor, which is me for my students, but anybody else you wanted to send your project to, and then they could open it up in their own copy of Unreal. So hopefully this video was helpful and taking all your individual components, bringing them into Unreal and combining them all together. I hope that was useful to all of you. And if you have any questions, definitely don't hesitate to let me know.